Good morning, students. Today we'll be starting our last unit for history, Reform. Chapter 1 is called the Populist Movement. By the end of the 1800s, there was a growing number of people living in the United States. It had grown to more than 76 million people. And most of those immigrants and people who were living in the United States were living in the cities. They took jobs in factories, including children who were working in the factories. But factory jobs were hard. They required very long hours and they only paid a small amount of money. People were struggling to survive. Many had difficult lives. Farmers were struggling on their farms. City dwellers were living in unsafe buildings. Minorities faced segregation and discrimination. Women could still not vote. The time was ripe for change. Reform was coming. So we're going to move out of the cities into the farming communities for a little bit to talk about how reform was happening there. It first started with farmers who started a new political party called the Populist Party, and it was formed by American farmers in 1891. As the price of products was dropping, farmers were losing the value of money for many of the things that they were producing. And other problems were also happening. There was a great drought in the Great Plains, and many farmers had to leave their farms and return east. Farmers were also facing things such as plagues with grasshoppers, dust storms, floods, tornadoes, fires, and thieves. For many farmers, their anger about their situation was directed towards the supply of money in the United States. Farmers believed that the bank's control over the money was the reason for their problems. So in the past, the word silver certificate had been used on the dollar bill. This meant you could go to a bank and then trade your dollar bill for a dollar's worth of silver. This was also the same for gold certificates. But during the Civil War, the US issued greenbacks, or paper money, to help pay for the war. There was more money around, which led to inflation, and things began to cost more than they had in the past. Then the government started to take money out of circulation to help stop the decrease in the value of money, which meant that money was hard to get. This tight supply of money hurt farmers who were in debt. They could not pay back their loans and banks were taking their farms. People were not sure if they could trust this paper money to be worth the same as money made of metal. There was a limited supply of gold, but there was a lot of silver. The value of silver could vary, so people were concerned that they could not trust the value of silver for their money either. That was the bankers who were concerned that they could not do that. Now, the farmers wanted the government to start using silver for their money, and these people were known as supporters of free silver. These angry farmers joined together with some trade union members to form the Populist Party. They were called populists, and they wanted more than free silver. They also wanted a shorter workday and a graduated income tax. Some others wanted money to be backed by gold, not silver. These supporters were called gold bugs. Next, we're moving on to talk about William Jennings Bryan. William Jennings Bryan was one of the greatest public speakers in American history. He was also known as a good orator, which is the name for someone who speaks in public. Even from an early age, he would recite lessons to his mother and give speeches. In 1896, the Democratic Party wanted a candidate to run for president who would support their cause of free silver. Bryan had served 2 terms in the House of Representatives, and he was the man they were looking for. He was well-spoken, well-liked, and a supporter of free silver. Bryan was one of the first politicians to travel widely, using public speaking appearances to attract followers. He used 2 phrases, the cross of gold or the crown of thorns, which sounded like language from the Bible, and the public connected with this message. He discovered that by mixing religion and politics, he became a hit with many Americans. Now, Bryan gave a special speech during the presidential campaign, which became famous, known as the Cross of Gold speech. He began by defending farmers and working people. Then he talked about the gold standard and how it was destroying American lives. His talk was a big hit. The next day, he was chosen to run for president on the Democratic Party ticket. He did not win the election in 1896. The Republican candidate who won was William McKinley, and his vice president was Theodore Roosevelt. They would both adopt many populist ideas during their time in office. As the economy improved, people did not worry about the issue of free silver as much. Republicans introduced several reform issues, such as a shorter workday, that went along with Bryan's ideas. Bryan ran again for office in 1900 and 1908, but did not win. He did, however, serve as Secretary of State under President Woodrow Wilson.